hit refresh to make sure that my video is working. Welcome, welcome. It shows that it's working on my end. Hello, everybody. So if you can hear me, let me know inside of the chat, as well as pop in and say hi. I see a bunch of people joining from all over, and I've been waiting for this class, you guys, for what feels like months. I've been prepping for this, and I can't wait to be painting with you for today's dog portrait masterclass. Let's see. Hi, Lauren. Hi, Joe. We have people coming in from Dallas, Georgia, Sonoma, California. Hi from Chile, Pennsylvania. Hi, Cindy. Yep, it's chilly here. I'm over here in Wisconsin. Zoe, Cynthia. Oh, it's just so fun to see all the different states here. And I know that I've even been having some people joining in from international places like Canada. Hello from Minnesota. Hi from Madison. Very, very cool. Hi, everybody. So I'm just gonna wait a minute as people start to join so we don't, so they don't miss anything. And in the meantime, I just wanna say hello and thank you so much for being here. If you're seeing this live, you will also get access to the replay. So I know a lot of people weren't able to make it live today. So you will get an email after this class with the live link or with the replay from our live today. Oh, I see a comment of, I'm so nervous. Please, please don't be nervous. This is, like I just mentioned, you're going to get the replay and you will be able to hit pause. You can hit rewind on the replay. So today, I hope you do have your paints and your supplies with you. I would love to make sure that you guys are able to paint along with me if you are able to today. If not, you will get the replay, so don't worry. Hi from Quebec. How cool is that? All righty. Let's see. I want to make sure that we are all good to go. Can everybody hear me okay inside of the chat? Seems like it's all working on my end. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Okay, thanks Jenny for saying yes, she can hear me inside of the chat. So just a little housekeeping. Today's class will take you about an hour to an hour and a half. I am going to include a Q&A, question and answer session at the very end. So please stick around. And I also have a very exciting announcement at the end too. So with that said, hold on to your questions. If you need to, get a little separate sheet of paper and jot them down so then you can enter them into the chat when we get to the Q&A session at the very end. That way I don't miss them as the class is going. I don't want to miss your important questions. I want to also just say hello from my Wisconsin in-home studio. And my name is Allie. I'll introduce myself quick. My name is Allie, and I am a watercolor artist. I have a business called Windswept Design Studio, and I specialize in pet portraits, watercolor pet portraits, but then I also specialize in wedding invitations. So I take my watercolor designs and turn them into beautiful wedding invitations for people all over the world, and it is the coolest thing. And so today I am getting to teach what I absolutely love, which is how to paint pets. And my hope for you is that if you've been wanting to get started with pet portraits, that you'll find this class very helpful in getting started. And we are going to walk through a full dog portrait today. And we are going to cover my favorite supplies, my favorite textures and techniques for creating curly hair texture. We're going to be painting an adorable Bernedoodle today. So you should have received, if you are signed up, if not, there's a link below in the description of this live video. You should have received an email that has a printable outline. So we are not going to sketch today. You'll have this outline. My hope is that you have it printed out or traced. I have a description on how to trace it if you don't have a way to print on watercolor paper. So be sure to grab that if you have that handy. And we'll also talk about supplies. So that way you will be ready to just dive in when you're ready to paint. So I think that about does it for me saying hello and welcoming all of you. So I am about ready to turn around. Actually, I just want to make a mention to this class. You'll want to make sure I also include a reference photo here. So that'll also come in the email with your printable outline. And it's very helpful if you have that next to you, or you could have it printed next to you. So you won't be able to see my reference in the video today, so I can get a better zoom in on the painting process. Okay, so without further ado, I am going to flip you guys around and we are going to just chat a little bit more about supplies and do a few little warm-up sessions before we get started. Okay. Here is our cutie that we are painting today. It is a Bernedoodle. So here is then the outline that you will get with the class. What we will go through today is painting this entire dog, and I'm just so excited because of this cute little bow tie especially, but I first want to chat about supplies. So for this class, you really could do everything with a nice pointed round brush. So what I love to use are these pointed round synthetic brushes. So I'm able to get a really nice point and detail work with this brush, as well as a bigger flat wash. So size 6 or 8. Now, not all brands are created equal, so you do want to make sure that you find one that's kind of more in the medium to smaller side for this. This is a 5x7 painting that we're painting today. And then I also recommend getting a liner brush. And a liner brush simply means that it's just a really, really small, fine tip detail brush. Mine is a 000 by Winsor & Newton Cotman. These ones are by Etcher, but I love Winsor & Newton and Etcher brand supplies. So those are the brushes I'll be using for today. As far as the paint colors, we won't use all of these here, but for all the pet portraits that I paint, I only use 8 colors. So you do not need many colors. You'll need yellow ochre. This is a Van Dyke brown, Payne's gray. This is the Nalzerian crimson, and then some type of orange. It's called cadmium red, but it's orange. And then this is a really warm burnt sienna, and it's really like a gold color. And then this is the burnt sienna. So for today, I'll really be using mostly just the Van Dyke brown and the Payne's gray, and then these warmer reds and oranges for the tongue and mouth area, and not so much of the browns and the yellows. But then, of course, for the bow tie, have some blue colors next to you if you want to do blue, or have just your creative fun freedom to do the bow tie in whatever festive color you would like to do it in. You'll also then need watercolor paper. So the paper that I love to use is by Arches. It's 140-pound cold press paper, and it is 100% cotton. And it is a very professional brand of paper. I use it for all of the pet portraits, custom pet portraits that I create. So I highly recommend getting a nice 100% cotton professional grade paper. The cold press means that it has some tooth to it, so that also allows you to work with the paint longer on the paper before it dries. They also make a hot press and a rough texture, but the one that I'm using today is a 140-pound cold press. And last but not least, one of the paint colors that I did not talk about today so far is the Bleed Proof White by Dr. P.H. Martins. and it is the paint that I'll use to create the tiny hair textures at the very end. You can also use a white gouache paint. You could use a white gel pen, anything that's opaque, white that is going to stand out, but this is my go-to when it comes to painting white details. And then of course you'll need your water next door and then the paper towel to be able to control the paint and water on your brush. I now just want to show a little demo quick here before we get started so you can feel comfortable with the color mixing for this dog portrait. So what I'm going to do is just grab any of my brushes. I'm just going to grab my size 8 pointed round brush. And like I mentioned, this dog is going to use a lot of Payne's Gray. Can you use white acrylic? So that's, Cynthia was just asking, and I will address that before we get too far into the painting, because white acrylic, I find, does not show up very well on watercolor. And you could give it a try, but it's a little more transparent than you would think it would be, in my opinion. So that's why this bleed-proof white, or you could do the gouache, is also a water-based paint, but it's opaque. So it's a great question there. Okay, so color mixing. We are going to use Payne's Gray. And special note that different brands of paint, they may be called the same color. So for example, Payne's Gray, but they are actually going to come across a little different as far as their color. So just so you know that going into your painting today, I'm using the Winsor & Newton Cotman and Professional brand paints here. So just so you know. And then another color combo that we'll be using is the Van Dyke Brown mixed with Payne's Gray. And this, as you'll notice, I don't have any black in my palette because this is the black that I love to color mix with. So it's the Payne's Gray and the Van Dyke Brown. It creates a really pretty warm, dark color. And that's what I love more than using a traditional black. I think it just makes the painting look a lot richer. So those are the two colors that we'll mix with quite a bit in this painting. And then when it comes to creating the depth and contrast, to get a lighter color with watercolor, you just want to make sure you have less paint and more water on your brush. So here we have, I would say, a medium tone. And if I want to make that lighter, I'll just pick up more water on my paintbrush, dab my paper towel, and use what's left over on my brush to create a lighter color there. And if you don't have these specific colors, I would just use a traditional, just chocolate brown, whatever. Usually a lot of palettes come with a traditional brown. So I would do that. I work from these tube paints, which I am a huge fan of because they last really long and there's so much paint in these tubes. The color to me is a lot richer. So I work from these tubes, but you can also work from a cake palette that just has all the colors already poured into the wells. Okay, so back to our color mixing. There will be areas within the dog, especially when we go to lay down the foundation colors, where we will just be using a traditional light brown. So that will be the color palette we're working in today. And so not many colors, which I think is always the best, that you don't need a lot of supplies in order to get started with pet portraits. Okay, here we are with our cute little Bernedoodle outline, and I am ready to get started painting. I'm just gonna make sure that I'm not missing anything really important in our questions. But yep, so as long as you can find a regular, just chocolatey brown, the Van or the Payne's Gray is very similar to if you had, I would say, a blue and mixed it with a little bit of black. You could go that route. And then these colors we really won't be using too much. We might use a little bit of the burnt sienna within the eyes, but otherwise the red and the orange will be helpful when it comes to doing the mouth and the tongue. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Going to just make sure I can get everything in here for you so you can kind of see the entire workflow of how I like to approach how much water and paint are in my brush at different times of this dog portrait. So again, I am going to start with working with my number 8 pointed round brush. Just go ahead and get your brush nice and wet. And the base layers of our dog, we're going to start with the ear. I always love starting with ears. They are the perfect place to get warmed up and not feel too intimidated when you're painting. So we will start there. And I am going to mix up a little bit of that Van Dyke brown. I'm even going to add a little bit of red into that Van Dyke brown to make it a little bit warmer. And to begin, I am actually going to paint that as little highlight areas on the ear on this side. So we'll just add a little bit of that brown. And when it comes to painting these curls, we are going to do a lot of swoop motions like this as we begin to craft those curls. So again, working our way down, this is going to be a little area of our base layer here. We have a lot more layers to go. Zoom in a little bit more while you are working. Sure, I can try to do that. Let's see. Let's do that. There. And now while that's still wet, we'll want to pick up our Payne's Gray. So I have about a medium amount of Payne's Gray on my brush. I don't want to make it too dark right away because that way I can add layers later. So we are going to first begin by dropping it in. I'm going to get rid of some of that paint on my brush right over the top of that brown, and it's going to do a really pretty color mixing. And working my way down and around the ear, just going to do little strokes like this. So that way we are starting to craft those curls. So I see another really big curl there. I'll even take my clean brush and lift some areas away to help smooth some of those areas into the background. But as you can see, so what I'm doing is doing little tiny strokes like that, and that's leaving little bits of white and creating the direction, almost like a map for the curls. So I have very little paint on my brush, and that's helping to push that around. This time I'll mix the Payne's Gray with our Van Dyke brown. And dabbing it on my paper towel, I'll continue to show those little streaks as I work my way up into this portion of the ear. And don't worry about how these areas are drying much lighter because we will go back through and add more dimension. It's very important to show the little hair textures that jet out from the side of the ear. So what I'm doing right now is just using a very little bit of pressure and just doing some strokes off the side of the dog's head. Just picking up a little more Payne's Gray. I don't want too much on my brush here. I want to make sure that I'm working lighter. And again, nice long strokes. In your reference photo, you'll be able to see the direction that those hairs are going. So I'll do a few strokes, get rid of the paint on my brush. So I have mostly water. And then I am just going to smooth them up. If I painted everything too dark right away, I wouldn't be able to take away that paint and make it lighter. So that's why we are starting lighter than we may see in the actual photo. So right now I have layers of brown mixed with Payne's Gray. That's just creating this pretty little base layer here. So now as I work my way up into this area, I see another shape here. So that's really helpful when it comes to painting, especially curly dogs, is you can see little shapes of the way that the hair is kind of spiraling in different ways. So let's go ahead and do this next shape, mixing Payne's Gray with a little bit of the Van Dyke Brown. I'll dab my paper towel, and I'm just going to kind of outline that shape. So there's a nice dark area there. And then what we'll do is get rid of some of that paint and make that wash kind of flow. So you want to work in the direction of the hairs, and this helps to also sculpt the dog. So again, just doing little spiral out motions like this. I'm going to get rid of that paint on my brush because I want it to get lighter as it works its way out. And we have little hairs that are jutting out up top here. And we'll do some kind of coming back down. There's going to be quite a bit of white hair right at the top of his head here. So what I'll do is just leave a lot of that. And I want just the slightest amount of Payne's Gray on my brush. And that will help to paint in the direction of those white hairs. So just laying a little foundation in there for now. This will also, all the white areas will have at the end with the bleed proof white will help to feather those white hairs into the dark areas. But we have to lay our dark areas down first because you can't paint over that white gouache or bleed proof white. Okay, so let's go back, and I see another shape here too. So this one spirals out from the eye, which is one of my favorite features to paint in a dog, is that little fluffy area that comes out from their eye. I should note too that the majority of pet portraits that I paint, I leave the eyes for the very end because they are such an important part of the dog that I want to make sure that I am seeing all my darks and lights and colors and getting very ready and warmed up before I do the eyes. So that's why I leave them for the end. Okay, back to color mixing my Payne's Gray. I'll just work in mostly the Payne's Gray. Of quite a bit on my brush here. And then to control it, I'll just dab my paper towel. But we will start painting with very little pressure, those really dark hairs that are coming off and spiraling out from the dog's eye. Just going to paint a few like that. I'll get rid of that paint on my brush. And then what I'll do is take my brush and just start to kind of run it over those areas. This helps to smooth that out. Again, now I want this to be nice and light, so I don't have much paint at all on my brush. I'm just smoothing it in as I head down towards the eye. And right underneath it here. This area will definitely get darker. We're just laying the groundwork for now. Okay, so pretty simple lines, not much detail happening, but enough to be able to see the direction of the hair at this point. Let's continue that same approach of what I just did on the other side here of this eye. So we'll start to paint those nice dark lines up and around. You can even paint some jagged edges here of how those little white hairs are going to come over top. And now I'll get rid of the paint on my brush. Since I have quite a bit on the paper, I'm just going to use that to smooth it out in the direction of the hair. And again, leaving little white areas. So then we can kind of see the hair texture. Okay. So you'll notice that this side got darker. It's a combination of it being wetter than this side and just might have had more paint. I'm not too worried about that because we will balance all of this as we begin to add more layers. So adding a little bit of brown to my Payne's Gray. Dabbing my paper towel. I'm going to leave a little bit of a line here because he has a nice shadow from the hair that is kind of spiraling out and leaving a shadow on this part of his face. So I'll paint that shadow in. And then getting rid of the paint on my brush, I will just smooth that in and around the eye. And just pull that down. Wanting to make sure that that stays medium to light as we work our way down into this chunk of his face here. So I'm just going to pause here to make sure that you're catching up. So again, watercolor dries lighter, and that's why these areas are feeling lighter. But what I love about laying these base layers in is that we're not using one color only. So I'm not using Payne's Gray only. You'll see the warm browns, and these are really pretty undertones when we go to lay those top layers in. Okay. A lot of the same though, as far as the color mixing for the base. So as I work my way to the right of the dog's head, I'm going to mix up the Payne's gray. I like always adding a little titch of the brown because it does warm it up a little bit and not quite so blue, even though we see a lot of blue reflected in this hair color. So again, looking for more dark patches. I have a dark patch right here. So I like to start with those because that's the safest with the amount of paint that I have on my brush. I'll start with this patch right here and then we'll work around that. There's one right there. And then picking up a little bit of Payne's gray. We'll use that to kind of paint in with white, showing in between those hairs that are coming out from the eye. And with very little color on my brush, I'll just fill in that little area around the eye. Okay, so from here, like we did over here, we're going to use very little paint on our brush, and we are going to show the direction of those curls and map them in our dog here so we can add our darkness on top of that. So I see a little curl kind of go on that direction there. You might need to pick up a little bit more of the Payne's gray if you're running out. But what we want to do is just go in a couple different directions. The beauty of a curly dog is I personally think they're easier to paint because you don't need to be exactly perfect with the direction of their hairs. They're a little more forgiving in that way. So again, working our way down, making sure to leave white in between. This is where I'm going to grab that warm brown and red mixture. So that was the Van Dyke brown mixed with the red. Also one of my favorite color combos when you're doing chocolate, like a chocolate lab, is mixing the Payne's gray and red, or excuse me, it's mixing the Van Dyke brown with the red. So I don't need a lot on my brush. This one's even leaning a little more red than I want, so I'll just pick up more, mix that in. But I don't need a whole lot. I just want a nice undertone wash. So I'll just take a little bit of water and smooth it out here. Okay. Back to the Payne's gray. I'll start right underneath where the top part of the face here, as you can kind of see, there's a couple different layers to his face. There's the white piece, and then there's this piece that's right below the nose, and then there's his ear. So let's define where the ear connects to the side of the face. Like that. So I'm just laying in a nice dark color there and then pulling it down. And then we'll do these little C-like brush strokes as we work our way around the ear there. I'll add a little bit of brown to my Payne's gray just to help warm it up. And with very little on my brush, we want to make sure that this area is a highlight. So I'm just going to do a few light strokes like this. And now we'll grab a little bit more of that same paint. It's always a little bit of a dance to know how much paint you have on your brush. And if you need to, use a scrap piece of paper, have that on hand, and you can dab that just to see what you have. Okay, so there is another shape right here. I'll get rid of the paint on my brush. I'll use that paint to work it into some of those lighter areas. And again, showing the texture. So there is more brown than I would like to see. What I'll do is just pick up the Payne's Gray, and we are going to start to lay that in just so we see subtle hints of the brown popping through. And use some of that darker color to make longer strokes. And I love that it's doing a little bit of a wet on wet technique, so some of the areas are not staying put and they're blending a little bit more. I'll show that up close here. So there's not a lot of control as far as some of these areas, but that's okay. Once that dries, we'll add in our final hair details. Okay, let's see. I just need to finish up some of this little area on mine. So I'll just add a little light of that Payne's Gray. Substitute for Van Dyke Brown, maybe ultramarine blue, mixed with burnt sienna and a hint of alizarin crimson. Ooh, I like that. That sounds like a nice combo. I think that would actually be a nice, yeah, play with that and see. Use a scrap piece of paper for testing out your color swatches. Okay, so I do know that this area is going to be much, much darker, and it's going to help me visualize the dog better. So I'm just going to add in that nice dark area there. So I just laid it right on top of the ear and the lower part of the face. And that's going to help me see the separation. So we can kind of start to see this dog's ear is coming to life. I will continue to bring some of that dark as I work my way up here. So again, I haven't switched my brush. I'm still using the size 8 pointed round brush because with very little pressure, I'm able to get quite detailed. And with more pressure, I can get larger areas. Let's finish up here. So I have Payne's Gray on my brush. I see another nice shape here. Right between the white fluff hairs on top, there's this really nice dark patch. So just sketching that in. And I'll get rid of that paint on my brush. And I will just feather right around like that. Again, getting rid of the paint on my brush. I have very little, and I'm just going to fill in these under base layers. Can't wait to show you at the end the magic of the bleed-proof white and what that's going to do for the transition of these white hairs. It really will elevate the painting. So that's what I have up there. Just grab a little more Payne's Gray. This got a little too light up here, so I will add just a nice darker wash there. And smooth it out there. Okay, looking good so far. You can kind of see this dog is coming to life, even though it's just really those foundation layers. So next, I think it would be great to do the dark nose, and then we'll work off of this dark nose to create the white section of his nose. So reason being is I like to see some of my darkest dark areas, and that is a good indicator of the contrast and being able to match. So the nose is just as dark as some areas in the ear, as well as this part of the ear, and that's going to help make the dog look realistic. So to do that, my favorite way to begin with the nose is to paint the darkest part first, which is the nostrils. And I'm just going to use the same brush. It will be the Payne's Gray mixed with the Van Dyke Brown. And that's going to give me that black-like color. So if you needed to switch brushes, you totally can do that to get a little bit more control. But again, I'm just going to lay in and really just painting in that section of the nose there with the little line that juts out. And again, this side. And then the little line there. I think I will go ahead and switch to a smaller brush just so I can get a little bit more control in this lower half. So before we do that, we're gonna mix brown and Payne's Gray together. I really just want kind of a nice warm dark brown. And that is going to be the underlayer of our nose, leaving a little bit of a white highlight. If you lose it, it's okay. You can add it back in with the bleed-proof white. So here we are, adding in the brown. I'm only going to do it to the lower half of the nose here. Might even mop some of that up with just my brush, just picking up some of that color. Okay, let's get rid of that brown off of our brush. And instead we'll do Payne's Gray while this part of the nose is still wet. Let's run a line right along the lower part right here of the nose. And it's going to, it should at least start to bleed into and bloom into that brown part of the nose there. And let's take that paint and start to outline this part. And a little bit over here too. Now I'll get rid of pretty much all the paint on my brush because I want to keep the nose pretty light up top here. And it'll be great because it's going to pull in some of that line that we just painted around and down, being careful not to touch the nostrils the best that we can. And there's a nice shine right here, as well as on the left side of the nose. So leaving that mostly white, I have no paint on my brush right now. And this is what we'll do. We'll kind of do like a little speckling motion and texture as I work my way into the shine. So you might be wondering, why is there still brown in the nose and I don't see any brown in the photo? Don't worry, we will darken that up, but it is such a nice way to add a darker dimension in the nose. So let's just let that dry and we'll come back to it. So in the meantime, what we'll do now that this part of your nose is still wet, it's a great technique to be able to pick up just a little bit of extra paint, dab it on our paper towel, and we are going to, this is where we get to start some of the detail work here and show some of those little spiral hairs that are coming out from his nose. You can do some longer, as you'll see, and you want to paint in the direction of that in the reference photo, and it's going to start to shape his nose. My favorite on dogs is the little spiral that comes out from the center here. And then, so he has a little bit of a part that goes up the center. I just got to finish now working my way around that left side, pick up a little more of that Payne's gray color if you need. The very fine tip of my brush. You can switch to your liner brush at this point if you don't have as pointy of a brush. Okay, and some of the area down below the nose is it is darker, so we can just add a little bit more. So that's, it looks a little funny now, but that is the texture I have coming out from the nose. And I am going to add a few more little lines towards the outer edge so it's not completely flat. Yep, Mary, this will be available for a replay, so do not worry if you're just popping in. You'll get access to the replay. So again, now I am going to show some of the hairs that are jetting out and doing that really fun design as it works its way up into the bridge of the nose here. And down towards the part. And around. Looks like I could add a little bit more down and around here. Okay, so that is the detail work of our white nose. To soften those areas, what I like to do is grab a very little bit of amount of the Payne's gray and a little bit of brown. So very, very light wash. And we are going to run that right along the outside of the nose, right over top of those lines that we were just creating. And so using more of the side of my brush, I'm able to get that nice wider brush stroke and wash like this. So now you can start to see, so I'm adding some into the part. Some of those areas get a little softer. I'll show that up close here. Looking like we need to add a little bit more down in this little section here. So we want to leave a lot of white of the paper, but when you paint white fur animals, there is more color than you would think to capture the white fur. And I find that people are too afraid to go dark as they need to in some of the areas. So my tip is to go slow and start to build up areas and start with your darkest darks and leave your lightest lights, and then you'll work from those within the dark or within the white fur of an animal. All right, I'm going to stop on that part of it. Let's just finish up this nose over here, picking up a little bit of Payne's gray. I wouldn't say we need a whole bunch. It's going to layer right over top of that brown really nicely, and we want to be able to see a little bit of warmth come through. So we are just going to drop it right on in there, and we can help guide it up around the nostrils a little bit. If you lose the white shine too much, it's okay, you can always bring it back. And then we want to darken with a light layer up top and around the edges. And always nice to do the pull down. Oh, Mary, I see your comment here. If you go down into the description of this video, you'll see the free Dog Portrait Masterclass sign up link, and that's what you'll want to enter your email into. Sometimes I think if emails are spelled incorrectly, they're not going to make it to you. So go ahead and give it a try. If you've already tried once, it should land in your email with more information with this printable outline and the reference. Okay, let's go ahead and add in our details now on the left side and add a little more texture on this side before we get to our mouth. Because now we'll start to see this dog really come to life. So here we have the Payne's gray and the brown mixture. Quite a bit of it. As you can see, it is quite dark. If you need to, dab your paper towel. I like doing that technique because that way I'm able to control how much water to paint I have on my brush. So there is going to be a nice dark patch. I have quite a bit of paint right there. And now, as well as moving into the ear. And this is where we want to show the direction of the hairs. It's reflecting there, just it's a little too wet. This is where we're going to show the direction of those hairs, leaving the whites of the paper in areas and those base layers showing through. So with little strokes, I'll jet some out from the ear. You want to show the hair like it's lifelike. And then we can even smooth some of those areas with our clean dry brush, like that. Picking up more Payne's gray, let's darken some of these sections in here. There's a nice long curl piece of hair there. And this is where this portion of the face is meeting the ear. So we're going to make sure that that part does stay a little bit lighter, even though we're going to add a little detail to it. All right, don't forget to use very little pressure as you work your way around. Just doing light brush strokes, but it's now with the wet on dry technique, I'm able to control where those hairs are laying. Okay. So Payne's Gray again. Get rid of the paint a little bit on my brush. I am also now going to work on the darkest dark area, which is right where the white overlaps this dark part of his face. So I'll do a few strokes like that. I'll get rid of all that paint on my brush and I'll use what I just laid in to help smooth. And the hair is going to kind of jet out and down. So again, just smoothing it in. I want to make sure this area is in fact lighter than the area I was just working on in his ear. Picking up our Payne's Gray again. I do see a nice dark section right below that little white eyebrow. So I'll add that in there. The trick with painting dark dogs, especially black dogs, make sure that you actually have lighter areas than you think you need. And that's why you want to make sure that you're working lighter from the get-go. And we can always add in more as it starts to build. I still have Payne's Gray, quite a bit of it on my brush. And painting in that spiral hair that jets out from the eye. And those few hairs that jet into the white patch. And this area is going to stay lighter, so I'll just paint a few strokes and making them longer. Like that. Even though he's missing eyes and his tongue, he still is looking more and more like a Bernedoodle, so that is a good sign. Hope you guys are enjoying this so far. I am picking up more of the Payne's Gray, a little bit of brown just to help darken it, and we will begin to darken this patch because now this area is lighter than my left side of the face. So starting where the darkest dark is, and then I will pull that color up and out. Always showing hair texture. And if you ever want to soften the hair texture, just go ahead and pick up some more water and run your brush right over the area you were just painting with. Then we want to show a few jetting out from the eye. Thank you so much. Love how fast it comes together. Yes, it is It's so fun to see watercolor come to life, especially great to start with smaller portrait sizes like this. So this is a 5x7. And I mostly work in 8x10 size for commissions, but 5x7s are also a popular size, and they're just a really great way to test and get started. I would say a 8x10 size would take closer to 3 hours for me, whereas a 5x7 usually is around 1 to 2 hours, depending on the color of the dog and all the different hair textures. So again, picking up the Payne's Gray. We're getting there. We're getting to the layers. There's a nice dark one right here. And will help to shadow that area, as well as the white nose. Right where the white nose meets that black area. So I just like to run a few lines down. And then, getting rid of the paint on my brush, I'll use that. A little bit of water to pull that paint down and showing the hair. So I don't think we need a ton more detail up here in the forehead, but just to show some of those really nice dark hairs, you can just add a few in there. There's a few right there, as well as right on top. Always good to stand back from your painting. I usually try to do that a few times throughout a painting session and try not to finish the painting all in one go. Um, I'll get as far as pretty much finishing a painting, but I like to take a step back before adding in too dark of darks, because you just never know if, with fresh eyes, right here I can see we need a little more of a shadow. But yeah, with fresh eyes, you can just see new things, and it's really important to take a step back and approach with a new look. So right now I am just using up what I had on my brush for Payne's Gray. Adding some more depth and contrast in a few areas, but still showing those little hairs jetting out from the side of his face. It's so nice to have already laid the groundwork and pretty much what I like to call a roadmap of where those darkest darks are. And now we can just go back through and layer right on top and darken like I'm doing there on some of those areas. And I really like that nice bright highlight, so I'm going to leave it just like that. And I'll probably add just a little bit of Payne's Gray up top here just to help darken the ear, but again, leaving light areas. I see he does have a fun little curl right in here, so I'll just lay in a little bit of a dark patch. Hi, Linda. Yep, come on back. The replay link will be the same as where we are right now. So for the lower part of the face, let's go ahead. That is white, very similar to what we were doing up here. But it is not quite as in focus. So of course the nose is closest to the camera, so it doesn't have to be quite as detailed. Just going to mix up the brown and Payne's Gray. I have very little on my brush. And we need to show a little bit of a shadow right along where that white top meets the white bottom part of his mouth. So I just scrubbed a little bit of that light wash paint in there. And then continuing with that on my brush, working from the mouth in and pulling it out to show the hair. I need more water and paint on my brush, so I'll just pick up a little bit more. So we're just painting those little lines. And of course it's the white fur, but it needs to be dark enough to show shadows and things like that, and the direction of the hair. So you're going to paint it a little bit darker than you probably feel comfortable. It'll look much lighter once it dries, and we'll also be adding the dark lips in. Let's let this area dry, and we'll just continue down into the body here, and then we'll come back up for the tongue and have fun with the bow tie. Oh, and then of course the eyes. I know it always looks a little scary at this point, but we will get there. So for the body, same approach where I like to use bits of the brown wash. Let's do that first. So picking up just the Van Dyke brown or any chocolatey brown that you have. Just going to lay in a nice warm, might even add a tiny bit of red to that to warm it up. So I just want a nice warm wash in certain areas around the edge here. And I love creating this fun little point on the neck. I always think that gives them such fun character when painting a custom portrait. Otherwise, I do, when I do my custom portraits, we'll paint more of the accurate dog with the shoulders and neck all the way down. Okay, there is our brown. So we will pick up the Payne's Gray here. And I'll pick up quite a bit of it on my brush. And what we'll do is paint in the darkest dark area, which is right here, this shape right here. It's right where the chin overlaps the body. So I'll just paint some fun little strokes there. But then the body does get lighter as it works its way out. So just make this patch. I want to have those jagged edges to show the hair texture. And even some that goes right into the white area of this Bernedoodle. And then down. And then from here, I'll just grab water, a little bit of water, and dab my paper towel. And as you've learned already, pulling that color that I have added is now going to create kind of that highlight feel. Still leaving some white of the paper shining through. Don't worry, we're going to cover up that brown. So picking up some Payne's Gray. Just drop some hair texture right into the brown. I kind of want to soften mine, so I'll get rid of all the paint on my brush. I'm going to run it back through this little area right here to mop up some of that dark color. And then I will just pull some of these areas and flare them out so you can still see the brown. And we don't have to get quite as detailed in the body. It's more out of focus than the face. So that's one of my favorite things about approaching the body of the dog, since I focus usually from neck up. or kind of the chest up. Let's add in the same light grayish blue color on the right-hand side of this dog. He has a cute little patch of white down the center here. So starting again with the darkest dark area, which is right here where the bow tie overlaps, and then painting down, you just do little strokes. And that's going to create the illusion of a wavy hair on the body. I just picked up more water and I'm going to use that to smooth it out. Don't forget to jet out some hairs. Okay. Looking, I should call him dashing, not cute, but yeah, he's looking, or handsome. I am going to pick up a little bit of the Payne's Gray. This is one of my favorite colors to be using when you're doing white hair. Similar to how we did it up here, you can add little bits of brown, but there's definitely a lot of bit of Payne's Gray. Dabbing my paper towel, and we are going to show a nice little shadow in here right underneath the bow tie, and doing a few pieces coming down and off. And then since I have quite a bit on my brush, I'll get rid of it. And using that very, very little amount of paint, this is where we can just kind of have fun and jet our hairs off in the white area in a couple different directions. But I don't want to paint it all over. Just enough to show that there is a wavy hair texture. I'm going to mix a little more of that tan brown color that I have and drop that in some of the areas. Don't forget to accentuate that little point at the bottom here. Just carry that paint down around here. And looks like we have this little patch here. So I'll just add in that same color we were just using right there. Okay. Looking great so far. As far as now, we just have to do the mouth, the eyes, and then a bow tie. And then we definitely want to add those bleed-proof white details. So continuing on for the tongue, Algerian crimson, and a little bit of the cadmium red, which is just an orange. So if you have an orange, that is all you need for that warm tongue. So what I'll do is start with the back of the tongue here. That's where it's going to be the darkest. And that was quite a bit of paint on my brush, so I'll just get rid of some of that. And I will use that to pull it down. And then pulling this, I like to work on the sides here. I see a little bit of a shadow there. But we're really just laying the first foundation of our tongue. Pick up more water. Continue to just use the water to blend that towards the front. So that's all I have right now, pretty basic layer. And before that dries, what I do recommend is grabbing a little bit of that red and mixing a little bit of Payne's gray with that. And that's going to be the shadow color that we use right at the back of the tongue there. So before it dries, dropping it in, just run a little bit of a line back there, depending on how that is blending and bleeding. I might need to just help it, so I'll get rid of the paint on my brush and just help scrub it out and kind of control a little bit more of it that way. And also make sure to hit the line that runs right down the center of that tongue. And the under part of this little flap of the tongue, that's a combination of what I like to use is burnt sienna mixed with a little bit of red. So if you do have that warm brown, that would be a good time to use that. And I don't need a whole ton of it on my brush, but this is what we'll use to paint this warm area right here. We can add a little touch of it to the left there of the tongue. And there's also a warm area right on the outside of the mouth, or out of the tongue, and then around that tooth. Okay, so now we need that to dry, and we'll add a little more shadow lines in there. But while we wait for that to dry, let's do the fleshy dark part of the mouth. And what I like for that is red mixed with a little bit of the brown, because you'll see that there is kind of a reddish brown in the reference photo there of the lip, and picking up just a little bit of the Payne's gray. So I have a warm, add a little more red to that, just a warm dark color. And that's what I'll use to lay in first. And we want to make sure we have lighter amount on our brush because we will be adding darker layers. So again, just laying that right in there like that. And I'll do the same for this side. And then from here, before that dries, if you need to switch to a finer brush, you totally can. I'm going to pick up the Payne's Gray. Not a lot of water, but quite a bit of paint just so I can control exactly where it's going to be placed. So I want that color to be the darkest back here. So I'm just going to run it right underneath where that white is there. So I want to be able to see some of that brownish red color. And then we're going to do the same on this side. So adding in the darkest dark here, bringing it over the top, then hitting a little bit towards the bottom. And then for the front lip, I like to just go ahead and outline that area. And then we'll get rid of the paint on our brush. And then pull some of that in to form the front lip. Can even pull some of that down and around that tongue there. With what is left on my brush, depending on how much you have, you might need to dab your paper towel. This we'll use to paint that center line of the tongue to really help that come to life. I do have more than I want, so I'll just use a little bit of a wash to darken the back. And I'll also use it to run a line right there because there is a fold in the tongue. And depending on how much paint you have on your brush, we just want to add one more little warm, dark layer so it's that red mixed with the Payne's gray. Don't need a lot of it, but this is what's going to help add a little bit of dimension into that tongue. So you can just run a really light wash right in there and right up front here. Mine could use a little bit of a darker line to help the tongue stand out there. Okay, so there is the mouth. Might have missed a little darkness right back here. So depending on how yours looks, I'm just going to add a little dark spot there, and that really helps. Okay, so we are getting very, very close to finishing the face here with a little bit of Payne's gray on my brush. We definitely want to show a few little hairs jutting out from the chin and down and around the face here. And right underneath where that top piece comes down. So just adding a few of those in. Okay. Are we ready to do the eyes? I say let's do it. Okay. What I love to do for the eyes is what I do, first of all, is switch to my fine liner brush. Always a good tip to do because you don't want to have too big of a clunky brush where you have no control. And then secondly, I like to take my Payne's gray, and this dog especially has really distinct outline shape around the eye, which will be super helpful. So what we'll do is we'll take our liner brush and we are going to do the very, very top of our eye. So we're just creating the outline shape. And then we are going to do the same, a little bit thinner of a stroke on the bottom half. And the beauty of a curly dog is that you don't have to complete the eye, like towards the inside there. You can just do a few little dark areas to show how the hair is coming into the eye. And then there's even one more dark little line which helps to define the iris of the dog's eye. So I will paint that right now. So this is what I have to help give me the shape of the eye, and we'll do the same for the other one. And a fun tip too, if you're looking to get more of a point to your brush, take your paint and just spin it on your palette. Really helps to get those bristles in a nice point. Okay, let's do the top half of the eye. Like that. And then I don't have too much water, so I'm able to really control the bottom half. And then again, that little line that does the iris here. So the trick will be to let that outline dry. We're getting so close. I think in the meantime, let's go ahead and paint the bow tie and then finish with our eyes in our bleed-proof white, and then we will be done with our painting. So for the bow tie, you can make it whatever color you want. So naturally, I don't have the fun blue in this palette, so I will just pull from this one over here. And you could make it red for the holidays, or you could just follow along here. I'm just going to use this true ultramarine blue. So what we'll do is just paint that true blue color in. And I'm just going to outline it, but I'm going to map out my darkest dark areas, so there, as well as right up top and right below. And I'll leave these areas lighter right now. And then finally coming to this side. Okay. Adding a little bit more there. This is where I gotta grab my paper towel here. We'll start to smooth that in. So just taking whatever's left on my brush. Oh, thank you, Brenda. I very much appreciate that. Come on back and catch up where you left off. And there will be a Q&A at the end. So stick around, and one other fun, exciting announcement. So we are almost there. Again, I am just pulling some of that color out. There's a fun checker pattern to this bow tie. Okay. So for today's tutorial, I won't necessarily do the checker, but you could add that in afterwards. I just want to show a nice blue bow tie. So what I'll use is the Payne's Gray. And we need to drop it in the areas where it's going to be the darkest, which is right there underneath the chin, and defining the fabric of the bow tie there. Even a little bit towards the edge here, and a little fold. And I love the way that that's expanding in the blue there. So again, adding a little bit of a line down the center. And then taking our clean brush and just pulling some of that out. And that's where we can add in more texture if you want to this bow tie. You could make it polka dotted. As long as you lay in the foundation of the shadows like we just did, then you can add a pattern right on top. So depending on how we're doing for time, I might go back through and add a pattern on that. But that is the base layer for our bow tie. Let me move that palette and bring back my pet portrait palette. And what we need to do now is finish those pretty eyes. So switching back to my size 6 brush now, we need to add in the brown. So those eyes really are kind of a pretty chocolate brown. So just picking up the brown from my palette. I don't want too much. I want to be able to see about a medium amount. This is where we'll just drop it in, leaving white in the middle. These eyes are very small, so it's a little tricky, but yeah, so we just want to hit the bottom and outer edge. There. And then we will let that dry there for a little bit. I'm just going to grab the Payne's Gray because there are a few little details that I can do, the finishing touches now. There's a little line that goes down our dog's nose, as well as kind of right on the outer edge there. Can do some lines that are those hairs that are jutting out and around. This is where we can get those final dark details before we add in the bleed-proof white. But I'd say everything's looking pretty good as far as the dark details, but it doesn't take much. You can just add a few. So now we are just patiently waiting for the brown of our eyes to dry. And mine are actually in a good place that I could now continue into the pupil of the eye. So I have Payne's Gray on my brush right now. And we are going to paint the lower half of that pupil, trying our best to keep a shine towards the top. And that way we can still see a reflection. The reflection in the actual photo is quite large, and to me actually looks more blown out than it should in real life. So I'm making that shine much smaller. And it also helps to point where the dog is looking. So let's do the same for this one. Again, going very slow. You can switch to a smaller brush if you need, but we are just going to paint the lower half. And take a step back. I think that looks pretty good. You can always add in, don't worry if you're not happy with the shine of your dog. You can add it back in with our bleed-proof white. So that is what I'd like to work on right now, is the bleed-proof white details. So again, my go-to and favorite is Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed-proof white. Thank you, Mary. Thanks so much for joining. Isn't it such a beautiful dog? Those, all the doodles, I just think they're such a beautiful breed. I am quite dog obsessed, so I can't say I have a favorite breed, but they are pretty cute. Okay, grabbing the white on to my palette here. Just want to grab enough of what I actually need to work with. Otherwise, I don't want it to dry out. It reactivates with water, but not always the best, and it will dry out, so good to put the top back onto that. So using my 000 fine liner brush, I'm just going to spin my brush right into the white and add just a little bit of water. I don't want to dilute it too much, otherwise it's not going to stand out. But what I love is that it's just going to pop so nice on those dark colors. So here is what I think makes this portrait really come to life is by helping to transition and show some of those white hairs. So what I'm going to do is start up here. This little eyebrow area jets out. So I got to add more water. You want it to smoothly go across the paper, but you just want to show a few little hairs jetting out like so. And you don't want to do too much, but just enough. And this will help to show transition. One of the best places to have it will be right here. So just adding a few little spots where you can have those hairs that jet out and come across the eye area. This again is why I love curly dogs. The eyes are easier to do because you're going to have some hairs now that overlap them. So with just a very light pressure. Thanks so much for everybody who is saying thank you. Thank you for being here. I am just so happy to be painting along with you guys. I hope you have been enjoying this so far. We are almost done. I'm just adding those final details as we work our way around that white area. There's going to be a few spots up here that you can paint some white. Some dogs don't get quite this many white finishing details, but some, like this one, definitely can use extra white, even though I think he looked pretty good without it. It just really helps to make it more realistic. So bringing a few down and around the face here. A very helpful spot to add it in is right where these little white hairs from the nose overlap the tongue. So to me, that makes it really pop quite nice. Can even add some right around the nose. And coming off the bow tie or into the bow tie just to help layer that piece a little bit more realistically. And if you need to help transition anything into the body there, like so. You can also use it to bring back highlights if you lost any, or in the eye, like I mentioned. But otherwise, here we are with our super adorable Bernedoodle dog portrait. I will leave this here for a few minutes just so you guys can start or finish up where you're at, but I do want to start collecting questions for our Q&A session. So if you have questions that you've either been jotting down or have anything regarding pet portraits, so it could be on supplies, it could be just asking specific techniques or color mixing, I would be very happy, even as far as business stuff goes, I'm happy to answer pet portrait business questions as well. I have painted quite a few, nearly 100 dogs and cats within my business over the last years. So yeah, Sue was asking, how many commissions do you paint in a year? I paint, so what I actually do is I like to allot myself a certain amount per month. And so on my website, I'll say booking for the month of, and then let's just say January. And so I already have an idea of how many portraits I want to create for or offer for the upcoming month based on other projects that I have going or other life events that are happening. So that is helpful. But for me, my threshold that I like to do is around 10 a month, and that is totally a personal preference. So I usually go anywhere from, I'd say, 5 to 10 a month, more so in the holiday season. So starting in August, I start promoting my holiday commissions, and that way I'll start taking more. But yeah, so it really is helpful to break it down per month, in my opinion. How do you ship your portraits? Yeah, I ship my portraits with um, a sturdy backer board. And I also put them in a white sturdy sleeve, like a mailing sleeve, cardboard sleeve. And then what I do is I put that in a clear sleeve. So I explain more of this. I have more resources here on YouTube, but it's very important to make sure that they are super protected. So I have, like I said, a backer board, and then I put my portrait on top of the backer board, and then I put it into a clear sleeve, and that goes into the sturdy white mailer. And that's how I package mine. Okay, I'm gonna flip everybody around quick just so we can chat some more. Hopefully you're able to see this painting. And let's just flip her around. Hello everyone. Okay, so I am going to continue to answer questions. First, before I dive into more questions, I just want to share with you guys that I have a full course of 31 different dog breeds. So my Master Watercolor Dog Breeds course is available now for you guys to have additional practice on a whole wide variety of dog breeds. 31 different dog breeds to be exact, and we walk through step by step like we did here, and I have them broken into bite-sized parts for each of the breeds. It's a go at your own pace course. There is a Facebook community where we all can support each other, and it's so much fun. I have a great amount of students in there right now, and they have very much enjoyed working through the course. They have said that they have loved it so much. They've gotten commissions off of all their practice hours with the course, and they have also just done it to raise money for local charities. And so I will leave a link here in the comments for you to take a closer look at that course. I'll go ahead and drop that in right now. One second here while I collect that. It is lifetime access into the course, and the special offer I'm offering right now is $50 off the course through December 18th. So also feel free to ask questions on the course, the full course. Okay, I am now going to read some of your questions. Okay, we talked about shipping. Best practices for brushwork. So let's see. I think what you're asking is wondering how to get different textures with your brushes. Is that kind of what you're asking? I honestly just do so many different kinds of pet portraits. So I'm always practicing. Be sure to use scrap paper to do some practice strokes. You can, of course, with my Master Watercolor Dog Breeds course, we cover textures from curly dogs all the way to very short-haired dogs, smoother hair textures. How do you put in hairs on a short-haired breed? Okay, so that goes great with what I was just mentioning. In my course, I'll go more in depth in this, but when it comes to doing short-haired dogs, you're going to use more of the wash to create the depth in the pets versus actual brush strokes to create the hair. You will show some hair texture in a flat or a short-haired dog, but otherwise you are just going to use more so bigger brush strokes to create shapes and shadows. Okay. Let's see, how do you decide what to charge? Trying to gauge how long it will take you? Yeah, that is exactly what I do. So when I first started, I did a lot of research on other artists to see what they were charging, and they were artists that I, of course, really respected and idolized. So I saw what they were charging, and to get my foot in the door, I know that I charged less than I probably should have, but I just needed to get started. So I charged $175 when I first started back in 2017 for an 8x10 pet portrait that did not include a background. And I had great success at that price point back then when I was doing it. And that helped me get a ton of practice under my belt and feel a lot more confident. And then you don't have to wait a long time to raise your prices on your pet portraits. But you do want to look at how long they're going to take you, and you want to look at how many that you're going to be doing, and what your end goal is for earning in your pet portraits. Let's see. Your lines seem so soft, and mine are choppy and rough. I'm not using enough water. No, so you're wondering if it's coming down to the type of paint you're using, and most likely it's not coming down to the type of paint you're using, it is the amount of water on your brush. So I would definitely practice with how much water to paint you have on your brush and how you feel comfortable in controlling that. But that just by adding extra water to your brush is going to give you a much smoother brush stroke. The other thing that could be affecting it is either your brushes are getting frayed and they're getting older, and it might be nice to upgrade and get a little bit of a newer brush. Newer brushes go and hold the water and the paint a lot smoother, as well as the type of texture you're painting on for your paper. Okay. USPS or UPS or post office. I have done all of my shipping through the post office. Knock on wood, through all of the 100 some things or portraits that I have shipped, I have had amazing luck. So I do the post office when I go to ship. I also get the tracking. So they always, after I'm done with their portraits, I will send the customer an email letting them know that their portrait is on the way, and then when to expect it, as well as the tracking code. You guys are so welcome. I see some thank yous. I am very, very grateful for you guys for being here. Just a reminder that the Master Watercolor Dog Breeds course that has the 31 lessons in there of dog breeds plus some additional bonus lessons is on sale today through December 18th. It is going to be the very best price that it's at for this limited time through December 18th. You can save $50 with the special code Dog Lover. I have it all in the description here below if you want some more written details on that. So let's see, how much this class, do we get a discount? Is it a 12-month? So the class is not, the course that I'm offering is lifetime access. It's a one-time purchase of $97 with the code today. So you get it for lifetime. And the best part is that if I add modules, if I tweak modules, you get all of the updates. So whenever I add any changes into it, it's yours. It's a one-time payment of $97 for today through Sunday. It is $147 without the discount. That is correct. So it's $50 off with the code DOGLOVER today through Sunday, December 18th. Okay, have you ever used a wisp brush to help with the fur? I have not, but I know which type of brush. I do have one of those, and I think that would be a really, really fun thing to explore more of. I don't see mine. Mine must be tucked away in a drawer somewhere. But I do have those where it has the nice fan, almost like a fan brush. And I think that would create some really pretty textures too. Okay, let's see. Go back to painting and add water. Yes, definitely add water. I'm seeing you're asking more about how to soften some of those rough edges. It is not too late if your paint has dried. I can still go back through and add a water layer on top of that to soften it. That's the beauty of watercolor, especially working on this 100% cotton paper. So student grade papers will be a little bit tougher to lift and spread your paint after it's dried, I will say. But give it a go, and I also recommend upgrading to the Arches 140-pound coat press paper. Okay, let's see. I don't want to miss any other questions here. You all are so welcome. I don't know if I'm missing any here. Again, this will be available to you. You'll receive another email yet today if you are signed up with the link to the replay. Right when we're done, I'll get it uploaded for you. Where do I get my dog models from? That's a great question. So all the dogs inside of the course, they were submitted as a way. So what I did is I asked for models on Instagram of pet owners, and they submitted photos of their dogs, and I went through and chose all the different dog breeds that I wanted to paint for the class. So that's how I did that, and they were willing to share a photo of their dog in exchange for their sweet portrait. And this also just makes me want to talk about reference photos and how important it is to get a good reference photo. I don't always get really great reference photos when it comes to doing custom portraits. And it is okay to let a customer know that if the reference photo is just way too blurry or too blown out, or it's just too dark, there's a little bit of things you can do to it in Photoshop, but most of the time, if it's just the coloring is just really hard to see, it's just not worth taking on because you won't be very happy with the outcome. Did you do any of them for free? So in regards to the course, they all got their dog portrait at the end at no cost to them in exchange for their dog photo for me to use as a reference. I have always charged for my pet portraits ever since the beginning of offering them. I was first asked by somebody to paint their dog before I had even offered it. It wasn't even an offering for me. And I am such a dog lover. It was the easiest yes I've ever said. So from there, I determined my pricing after doing some research, and I've always charged, but I have done auctions and donations and have submitted free and donations through my pet portrait work. Okay. Do you have a full list of the dog breeds in your course? I do. So if you go to the link to the course main page, there's going to be at the bottom half of that, that page, there's going to be the list, and it'll show you the entire curriculum inside of Master Watercolor Dog Breeds. It's going to show you all the dog breeds that are in it. And it'll even give you a preview. You can preview some of the Golden Retriever lessons, and the rest are going to follow suit with how the Golden Retriever videos are. And but you can see exactly what's listed inside of the course. Should also mention that all the dogs in the course come with the printable outline, so you're going to have the same feel as we did today during this masterclass. You'll get your printable outlines and your reference, and even breaking it down to seeing bite-sized parts as you work through it. And I do a really fun challenge come July called the Dog a Day Challenge, so I have ways to help you get determined to stick through the entire course, because by the end, I know it'll build the confidence you need to get started in pet portraits. Some love to do pet portraits just for friends and family that are in the class currently. Others are doing it for actual pet portrait business or to add it on into their current art business. Okay, let's see. Anne says, is the class you are offering the same as what you have offered in the past? It is the same course. So if you are already a member inside of Master Watercolor Dog Breeds, no need to repurchase or sign up. You're already in it and you're going to have lifetime access. So this is welcoming anybody new here who would like to join. I'm new to watercolor. Oh, so experienced in acrylics. How difficult will it be to transition to watercolor? I'm ready to make the move for pet portraits. Ooh, that's exciting. I would say the transition from acrylic to watercolor, I've done not a ton of transition there myself. I have done a little bit of acrylic, and I can also speak from painting with gouache, which is somewhat similar to acrylic and how it layers and you can put light on top of dark. I would say that if you already have experience in painting in general, the transition is going to be easier for you to pick up watercolor. The biggest thing is working light to dark when it comes to watercolor versus acrylic is a little more forgiving in that sense that you can lay the lights on top of your darks. I will say though that the wonderful thing about watercolor is that it doesn't quite make the mess that acrylics does because it is water-based, and it is obviously very easy to just put away in a drawer and pull it back out because you only need, for me, I have only used this palette in addition to the bleed proof white. Okay. Do you always do just the dog faces or do you do something for the full bodies? I mostly do from the chest up for the dog portraits. Reason being is that way you can get more detailed into the face, but I have done body. I have done, smaller dogs work better with the body, but if you do the body, or if I do include the body, I am not doing it on a smaller sheet of paper than 11 by 14. That would be the smallest I would offer for a full body portrait. Okay. And then when it comes to offering full bodies, I would probably look into how long in addition that might take you, because that might go into your pricing. Okay, other than word of mouth, how do you advertise your website? So my biggest driver for my business and pet portraits has always been Instagram. And so posting to Instagram, and then I will say word of mouth. I know it seems like it would be kind of a slow trickle in with word of mouth, but that is my best selling point is word of mouth and just doing the very best work that I can and taking care of my customers the best I can. And that has given me repeat customers as well as people who have referenced more for me to paint. So can't underestimate the power of word of mouth. But otherwise, yeah, Instagram is a great place. I also do Facebook and of course YouTube. Absolutely love YouTube. Another great way to get started in pet portraits, which is what I did, is to create posters and send emails to your local pet places. So that could be a groomer, the vet, daycares, and ask if you're a local artist and you would like to hang up a poster and that brought in some commissions, especially right away. And then I ended up having enough where I didn't really need to continue to advertise in that way. Another place you can sell is on Etsy, and that has its own traffic to be able to bring to you as well. Let's see, do we paint, or do I paint cats? I do paint cats. So they're not quite as requested as a dog portrait, but they just go in waves. Like sometimes I have way more cat portraits in a certain month than I do dogs. I definitely do cats. Between dogs and cats being the top two animals that I do offer. I have taught with a company called Etcher, and that one I did a cat portrait tutorial over there. So, yep, I do cats as well. When did you decide to make the website and how did you begin the process? So, at the very beginning of when you're deciding to launch your business, a great place to start if you're not really ready and you want to dip your toes in is Etsy. So you can easily set up shop in Etsy, and that way you can start posting a listing for your pet portrait. And in addition, you could sell other items on there too. But that would be a good place to start. Otherwise, the other site that I recommend is Squarespace. I absolutely love Squarespace. And I'm currently on a different platform now called Showit and Shopify. But Squarespace to me was an easier transition into getting started. And I did that pretty quickly into my journey of business. uh, I always love the look of having an established home base for your business, and that's why I chose to go that route with Squarespace. And that was back at the beginning of when I started my business, which would have been closer to 2016. Okay, do you seal your watercolor portraits? I do not seal them. So the beauty about what I do is when I don't have backgrounds, they don't warp that much. But what you can do is lay your painting once it's fully dry, lay it down. And if you're worried about the warp, lay another sheet of paper or a light cotton towel, and you can do an iron right on top of it. Not crazy high heat, but just an iron, and that way it will flatten your paper. It does flatten over time for the customer, so then once it's in its sturdy backer board, it does flatten, and then it gets put into a frame. It's going to get flattened there too. Okay. Be so fun to add some cats to the course. I agree. I've had a lot of requests for cats, and I have a plan there. So stay tuned, cat lovers. I do have a plan for you. Okay, as addition to one of my previous questions, how many times can a watercolor be reworked? For example, I can put aside an acrylic painting for a week and come back to finish it. I see what you're asking now. Okay, so you really can rework watercolor, but I wouldn't say it's going to be, whoops, I almost dropped my light here. I wouldn't say it's going to be for as long as acrylic and as forgiving as acrylic is. So what you'll do is you can always add layers to it, but taking the layers away from paint that has already dried is going to be hard. But I'll try and do this standing up so we don't have to switch this back around. As I continue to add water, it is going to get a little bit lighter. And again, it's not going to be perfect, but you can work watercolor a little bit after it has dried. I really, after I complete a portrait, I usually am shipping them out within that same week. So I haven't had to go back and redo watercolor into the future that far, so I can't say I know a whole lot on that, but I know what you're talking about with acrylic. You can just pick it up from where you left off. Okay. Each dog has their own characteristics. How hard is it to go from generic to personal looks? So speaking in terms of adding your own twist, is that kind of what you're looking at or talking about? Adding your own style? So, um, I really just am able to try my best to capture their faces. I like the realistic look in my pet portraits, but you can take what you learned in getting comfortable with watercolor pets. There are a lot of similarities in dogs and their features. So their noses have a lot of similarities. And once you start to learn those similarities, you can start to have more fun and put your style into it. Okay, for lighting and photographing them, I would always recommend daylight and being next to a window. So you could lay it, what I do is I take mine and I lay them on the ground next to a big door that has a huge window in it. And that way you're able to get the natural light in, and I would turn off any overhead lights. You don't want that warm light glowing in on your pictures. You can also, if you know how to scan, you can make them and put them onto mock-up images, and that is a way that you can work around those dark days in the winter if you don't have as much daylight access. You scan in your painting, and then you are able to put them into a Photoshop or a JPEG mock-up. It's pretty cool, and it makes your aesthetic look really nice and clean on your Instagram or wherever your portfolio is being held. Let's see. I don't know if anybody found that I have missed your question. Go ahead and recopy and paste it in here so I don't miss anybody. Is there a place where we can upload the painting we did with you of this dog today? I'd love to see others' work. Love that so much. Yes, if you take a picture and post it on Instagram, I would love to share your finished paintings on my story. So please do that. What you'll do is take a picture and tag me at Windswept Design Studio on Instagram, and I will happily share them. And that way you're able to all find the links to each other's profiles and stay connected that way, and you can see other people's work. That's a great idea. So again, I'll put my handle into the comments here, so that way you can find me. Concept Design Studio. And that you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Okay, I think that about does it. If anybody has any last questions, I'm very happy to answer. Let me know as far as questions from today's specific class. Either way, I hope you guys truly enjoyed it. I absolutely love painting alongside all of you guys. It is a gift, and I am very, very honored to be able to do this and share my love for watercolor and dogs with you. I can't wait to see your final paintings from today. So I also am very happy to answer any questions, hit reply on an email, and how about Facebook? Yep, that works too. I'm also on Facebook. You can find me at Windswept Design Studio, and I will be over there too. Thanks so much, everybody. Yes, and if you are a part of the 12 Days of Watercolor Christmas Challenge, this was the finale of that challenge, and I hope you guys really enjoyed getting to learn a pet portrait at the end. And it was so fun to paint with you in the last 12 days. I do want to thank you, Allie. This is, oh, well, you guys are all so welcome. I am very, very, very happy that you guys all joined in today. And with that, I will sign off and hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and very happy to be here and help answer any other questions you may have. Don't forget, the course is on sale only through Sunday for $50 off with the code DOGLOVER. And oh, I'm just seeing one more comment. I wanted to paint our GSD that passed away last February. That would be incredibly special. Yeah, I will say that is one of the most special parts about being able to do custom pet portraits for other people is many times it is a remembrance portrait. So it's incredibly special to be able to do that because I know personally how much our pets mean to us, and to be able to do that for others is a gift. So if you have the opportunity to even do that, take advantage of that and share your gifts. Okay. Thank you all so much for being here, and I can't wait to paint with you in a future video. Be sure to hit subscribe, and I will see you all soon.